A second time, I call the member for Maitland.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. On about the 30th of June this year, I found myself woken from a deep sleep in an apartment 24 floors above the ground by the sound of a fire alarm. And like all of the hundreds of other residents that live in that building that I stay in when I come to Sydney, I wondered whether it was a drill, whether it was a fire, what was going to happen. I got up, I walked down the steps, I had plenty of time to think about that, and I watched my fellow residents. And what struck me then is how none of them had a thought that the building codes, the building plans, the building components could potentially cause a catastrophic loss of life, such as we had seen in Grenfell Towers when 71 people died. It is an act of faith that all of us really do, and we go and live in these highly densely populated urban areas in apartments, that the government will do everything in its power to ensure the safety of the community through the selection of appropriate safe building products and the adherence to strict building codes. In fact, I would say that it's the ultimate test of any government to be the way that it acts or doesn't act to protect the lives of its citizens. And just on this bill alone, Mr Temporary Speaker, we see yet another failure of this government to engage authentically with business and industry, to heed the advice of experts and to act effectively to save lives. This government's arrogance and crazy priorities show that they value more highly a pretence at removing red tape, a pretence not to stifle innovation against saving the lives of people in our communities. And this is a fundamental issue for us. This whole debacle is something that the government has tried, and through the minister has said, they made the grand announcements as they usually do. We've got a 10-point plan. It plays well in the media. And so, that was released on July 10th this year. And, in that same month, the minister claimed that he would be hitting all parts of the supply chain. There was a consultation with building industry organisations on a draft bill, and there was general consensus that at last we were going to get somewhere. The Shadow Minister has gone through at length the history of this bill, the history of the opposition's concern and our attempts to raise this issue at an early stage to get real action on this as soon as we became aware of it. But when it came to the nub of the issue on the 16th of November this year, when the government introduced their bill, what we saw was a heavily edited version of the bill which no longer has the capacity or the capability on delivering on any of the commitments made by the minister. In fact, the Building Products Innovation Council has written to the Shadow Minister, and I just think it's so important to put it into perspective here, quoting directly from that letter. On November the 16th, 2017, the New South Wales Government introduced a heavily edited version of the bill to Parliament that is incapable of delivering on the government's commitment to the BMF, to the industry and, incredibly, to its own 10-point plan. On behalf of all building owners and the general public, the building products industry urgently calls for you to intervene and encourage Minister Keane to reinstate deleted clauses from the tabled bill so that the resultant legislation is harmonious with other jurisdictions, lives up to the commitments of the New South Wales Government, that the New South Wales Government has publicly made to control non-conforming building product and non-compliant building work. Now, there has been an extensive outline from the Shadow Minister on this bill about what Labor wants to happen. But really the major request from those industry stakeholders is the urgent reinstatement of the deleted clauses from the original version of the bill shown to industry stakeholders on the 6th of October. Like, what happened in the resulting not even 6 weeks between when the industry was shown what the government planned to do and when they came in here in this House. And I think that is indicative of the chaos that is overtaking this government. We have the Premier saying recently that there's going to be no more backflips and, we're going to have stable government. So they are pressing ahead with the ridiculous legislative changes that are coming into place, which are affecting small businesses, our industries, across the whole breadth of government. I mean, just as an example of this, Mr Speaker, we've got on the 1st of December the container deposit legislation coming through, the commercial fishers reform comes through, and these are both areas which have the capacity to really significantly affect businesses in this state to the detriment.
Point of order.
Minister, you have a point of order?
I'm always interested to hear the honourable member for Maitland's views on a range of issues, but in this particular case, the matter is the Building Product Safety Bill. So I'd ask you to bring it back to the bill.
Point of order is upheld. Member for Maitland, if you come back to the leave of the bill.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. But I think that it's always a pleasure to be having a point of order against me by the Minister for Health, because it's always about stopping any discussion about the broader implications of this bill. And this bill does not sit in isolation. We are in a parliament that runs so many pieces of legislation, and this is just yet another indication, an example of this government's inability to provide an effective stewardship of legislation in this state, and that they have no consideration for industry, that they have no consideration for the experts who work in the particular fields. And the point I was trying to make was around the commercial fishers, around the container deposit beverage manufacturers. All these people are having their lives, their businesses completely ruined. That is exactly what is going to happen here with people, the mums and dads who are going to be forced to pay to foot the bill here because of the government's inability to enact the supply chain legislation, which was promised as part of this legislation, which is missing from the bill. We just see them promise one thing, these big, great, fantastic things, and it is always whittled down to something that goes through whatever that machine is over on the other side of this house, which just acts to the detriment of industry, of businesses, of individuals. And in this case, the really damning thing is that we are seeing that could potentially cause the loss of lives. So that any person in this state who hears that fire alarm at 4 o'clock in the morning has got to wonder, am I going to make it? Is my building, is my apartment one of those which is at risk? I mean, the member for Charlestown spoke in her speech about the need for it not just to be owners and strata management companies that find out about these unsafe building products, but also for individuals who rent those properties. How many apartment rooms have we got in this city that could potentially be impacted by this legislation? I bet the government doesn't even know that. There is no, consistent or professional or by any means acceptable method in this madness that the government has put before us today in this bill. We've got the Housing Industry Association, the Private Certifiers Authority, the Building Products Innovation Council, so many members of this industry coming to us and saying this is a debacle. Stop it. Make sure that they come back with what they promised us they would do. And we've got, the Minister wants to raise his point of orders whenever he, come in and speak in the chamber. We've got the member for Miranda earlier here who's making jokes about it. This is deadly serious because these building products are deadly. And we need to get that clear to the Minister for Innovation and Better Regulation. We need to get it clear to the Premier that we are not joking when we're talking about this. That chain of responsibility to have fair, transparent, guaranteeing the safety of our community, making sure that that is everyone who's involved in building products and building these buildings is aware and responsible, is not even mentioned in this legislation. Removing unsafe building materials and products is not even mentioned in this bill. So, Mr Speaker, I just think that, Government can come in here and make a joke of this, but at the end of the day, it is on them, and if one person dies because this legislation is so bad, it is on every single person on that side of the house. This is typical of the tricky and duplicitous way that this government always chooses to work with our community. They promise to do the right thing, but the devil is always in the detail. This government needs to think very clearly about what they are doing.
I thank the member for